Mr. President, I rise today to speak about my amendment to the Justice for Victims of Trafficking bill that would make a minor but nevertheless very important common sense update to current telecommunications law to provide law enforcement with access to information that should and could help locate individuals in life or death situations. My amendment, identical to standalone legislation that I've introduced, and I will introduce again, is aptly named after the young Kansan whose life and bright future was cut short by a senseless act of violence and whose case is the inspiration for why we desperately need to update this law. 8 years ago, on June 2, 2007, 18-year-old Kansan Kelsey Smith, a lovely girl, was abducted in broad daylight from an Overland Park, Kansas parking lot. Kelsey's abduction was captured on the store's closed-circuit security camera, therefore leaving little doubt of the emergency nature of the situation. Here is the tragedy. 4 days after Kelsey disappeared, authorities were finally able to locate her body after her wireless provider released the ping or the call location information from her cell phone. 4 days. 4 days. Providing this information as fast as possible is absolutely critical to ensure law enforcement officials can rescue victims in immediate danger of death or serious physical harm, and hopefully prevent future cases similar to Kelsey's. This amendment is a culmination of years of work between legislatures at both the federal and state level, industry stakeholders, privacy advocates, and most importantly, Kelsey's brave parents who spearheaded this initiative and have advocated to create common sense reforms that properly balance the needs of law enforcement with the Fourth Amendment protection of all citizens. Through their advocacy and tireless efforts, Missy and Greg Smith have helped enact laws in 17 states, including my home state of Kansas, to provide law enforcement with the necessary tools to rescue individuals in emergency situations where the threat of death or serious bodily injury is imminent. And the impact of this law at the state level has been real and measurable. For example, in May of 2012, and 1 month after the enactment of its state's version of the Kelsey Smith Act, local authorities in Tennessee were successful in saving the life of a child who had been abducted by a suspected child rapist. Because the child was believed to be in imminent danger, police were able to successfully receive the location of the suspect's cell phone in a window of time that led to the safe recovery of the child alive and before she was assaulted. Now, according to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, the first 3 hours are critical to recovering a child alive. This is why it is necessary that in these few isolated instances, where a person's very life is at stake, an exemption should be made to release the whereabouts of that individual. Understanding this, my amendment would provide law enforcement with the ability to recover the location of children and other missing individuals in only very specific emergency situations, namely when there is risk of death or serious bodily injury. But in order to obtain the location, law enforcement must first provide a sworn written statement to the telecommunications providers, stating the facts that support probable cause to believe that disclosure of the location is required to prevent death or serious bodily injury. Furthermore, 48 hours after the location is disclosed to law enforcement, they must request a court order stating whether such agency had probable cause to believe the facts surrounding the rescue or recovery were warranted. The privacy of every Kansan, and every American for that matter, is extremely important. That is why my amendment includes this language to put into place safeguards against possible abuses of authority by law enforcement. I believe my amendment strikes the appropriate balance between the ability for law enforcement to help individuals in grave danger while also ensuring the proper checks are in place to guard against any overreach by the government. Kelsey was never given the opportunity to attend college or get married or have children and experience the American dream that many of us take for granted every day. But what she did do was inspire her mother and father to make it their mission in life to help educate and empower communities and children to help prevent another case like this from happening again. Kelsey's father, Greg, a former law enforcement officer himself and a Kansas state senator representing parts of Johnson County, said it best when he quoted Abraham Lincoln to describe what Kelsey had accomplished. In the end, it's not the years in your life that counts. It's the life in your years. Mr. President, I thank my colleagues for the opportunity to speak on the floor today, and I would have liked to offer my common sense amendment that would help prevent tragedies like Kelsey's. So I ask every colleague in this body to consider one question. If it was your child, your grandchild, your spouse, would you not want law enforcement to have immediate access to this information? Mr. President, let's honor Kelsey's memory by passing this legislation, whether standalone or in amendment form. I had every intention to ask for a vote on my amendment. I believe I would have had my colleagues' support on both sides of the aisle. This legislation is long overdue, and so is the trafficking bill. Mr. President, at this time, we are grateful for those who use their abilities and skills in ways that promote justice and goodwill in our land and who give leadership and authority to promoting the good of every citizen. That's not happening with this bill. That's not happening at this time. We find objections from the minority over a provision that has been in law for 36 years. This is delay again for Kelsey Smith, and amendments like mine that I think have bipartisan support. In this regard, I am frustrated, and I think it's shameful. I yield the floor.